Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Spoken language in discourse analysis. In discourse analysis, spoken language is a key area of study that focuses on how people use language in verbal interactions. Spoken language is dynamic, immediate, and often more spontaneous than written language. Analyzing spoken discourse involves examining various aspects of how language is used in conversation and other forms of oral communication, considering factors such as context, social relationships, and cultural norms. Here are key aspects of spoken language in discourse analysis, enriched with examples. Interactional nature. Spoken language is inherently interactive, involving real-time communication between speakers and listeners. It is characterized by turn-taking, feedback, and co-construction of meaning. Example: in a casual conversation, speakers take turns talking, using verbal cues like "aha" or "I see" to show they are listening and engaged. These interactions help to co-construct the flow and direction of the conversation. Context dependency. Spoken language is highly dependent on the immediate context, including the physical setting, the relationship between speakers, and the purpose of the interaction. Example: the way a person speaks to their boss in a formal meeting, e.g., using polite and respectful language, will differ from how they speak to a close friend at a social gathering, e.g., using informal and relaxed language. The context shapes language use significantly. Prosody and paralinguistic features. Spoken language includes prosody, intonation, stress, rhythm, and paralinguistic features, tone of voice, pitch, volume, that add layers of meaning beyond the words themselves. Example: saying, "I'm fine," with a cheerful tone and a smile conveys a different meaning than saying it with a flat tone and a sigh. These prosodic features help convey emotions and attitudes. Discourse markers and fillers. Spoken language often includes discourse markers, e.g., well, so, you know, and fillers, e.g., that help organize speech and manage interactions. Example: in storytelling, a speaker might use discourse markers like well or so to signal transitions or highlight important points. So, I was walking down the street, and, well, you won't believe what happened next. Repair mechanisms. Speakers use repair mechanisms to address misunderstandings, correct errors, or clarify their speech. These repairs are an important part of maintaining effective communication. Example: if someone says, "I went to Paris last week," I mean, last month, they are using a self-repair to correct a mistake in their speech. This helps ensure the listener accurately understands the information. Turn-taking. Turn-taking is a fundamental aspect of spoken interactions, where speakers coordinate who speaks when. This involves understanding and managing conversational cues. Example: in a group discussion, participants might use pauses, intonation, and body language to signal when they have finished speaking and to indicate when someone else can take a turn. Speech acts. Spoken language involves performing various speech acts, such as making requests, giving orders, offering apologies, or making promises. Each act serves a communicative function. Example: when a person says, "Could you pass the salt?" they are performing a request. The listener recognizes this speech act and responds appropriately by passing the salt. Pragmatics. The study of pragmatics in spoken language involves understanding how speakers use language to achieve specific effects and how listeners interpret these intentions based on context. Example: saying, "It's cold in here, isn't it?" might be a subtle way of requesting someone to close a window or turn up the heat. The listener interprets the implied request based on the context and shared understanding. Sociolinguistic variation. Spoken language varies according to social factors such as age, gender, ethnicity, social class, and regional background. These variations reflect and construct social identities. Example: teenagers might use slang and informal language to create a sense of group identity and differentiate themselves from adults. Similarly, Regional accents and dialects can signal a speaker's geographical and cultural background. Conversation analysis, CA. Conversation analysis is a method within discourse analysis that focuses on the detailed examination of spoken interactions. CA looks at the micro-level features of conversation, such as turn-taking, sequence organization, and repair mechanisms. Example: CA might analyze a doctor-patient interaction to understand how medical advice is communicated and how patients' concerns are addressed. This can reveal the underlying structure and norms of medical consultations. Power and politeness. Spoken language reflects and negotiates power dynamics and social hierarchies. Politeness strategies are used to manage social relationships and navigate power imbalances. Example: in a workplace setting, an employee might use polite language in hedging, e.g., "I was wondering if you could possibly," when making a request to a superior, reflecting awareness of the power dynamic. Multimodal aspects. Spoken interactions often involve multimodal communication, including gestures, facial expressions, and body language, which complement and enhance verbal communication. Example: during a face-to-face conversation, a speaker might use hand gestures to emphasize points, nod to indicate agreement, or maintain eye contact to show attentiveness. These nonverbal cues work together with spoken language to convey meaning. Conclusion: in discourse analysis, spoken language is a rich and complex area of study that encompasses the interactive, contextual, and multimodal nature of verbal communication. By analyzing spoken language, researchers can uncover how people use language in real-time interactions to construct meaning, manage social relationships, and navigate power dynamics. This analysis provides deep insights into the ways language functions in everyday life, revealing the subtleties and intricacies of human communication. Frequently asked questions. What is spoken language in the context of discourse analysis? In discourse analysis, spoken language is the study of how people use language in verbal interactions. It focuses on dynamic, immediate, and often spontaneous communication, examining how language is used in conversation and other oral forms considering context, social relationships, and cultural norms. What characterizes the interactional nature of spoken language? Spoken language is inherently interactive, involving real-time communication between speakers and listeners characterized by turn-taking, feedback, and the co-construction of meaning. For example, in a casual conversation, speakers take turns talking and use verbal cues to show engagement, co-constructing the conversation's flow. How does context dependency affect spoken language? Spoken language is highly dependent on the immediate context, including the physical setting, speaker relationships, and interaction purposes. For instance, the formal language used by an employee speaking to their boss differs from the informal language used with friends, reflecting the context's influence on language use. What role do prosody and paralinguistic features play in spoken language? Prosody, intonation, stress, rhythm, and paralinguistic features, tone of voice, pitch, volume, add layers of meaning beyond words. For example, saying, "I'm fine," cheerfully versus with a flat tone conveys different emotions, highlighting how these features help convey attitudes and feelings. What are discourse markers and fillers in spoken language? Discourse markers, e.g., well, so, you know, and fillers, e.g., help organize speech and manage interactions. In storytelling, markers like well signal transitions, while fillers like indicate pauses for thinking, helping structure and flow of spoken discourse. How are repair mechanisms used in spoken language? Repair mechanisms address misunderstandings, correct errors, or clarify speech, maintaining effective communication. For instance, saying, "I went to Paris last week," last month, corrects a mistake, ensuring the listener accurately understands the information. What is turn-taking in spoken language? Turn-taking is the coordination of who speaks when in conversations, involving managing conversational cues. For example, participants in a group discussion use pauses, intonation, and body language to signal the end of their turn and allow others to speak. What are speech acts in spoken language? Speech acts are communicative actions like requests, orders, apologies, or promises. Each act serves a function, such as requesting with, "Could you pass the salt?" where the listener recognizes and responds appropriately to the request. What is the role of pragmatics in spoken language? Pragmatics involves understanding the implied meanings, intentions, and effects of utterances. For example, "It's cold in here, isn't it?" may subtly request closing a window, with context helping the listener infer the speaker's intention. How does sociolinguistic variation manifest in spoken language? Spoken language varies by social factors like age, gender, ethnicity, social class, and region, reflecting and constructing social identities. Teenagers using slang to create group identity or regional accents signaling geographical background exemplify this variation. What is conversation analysis, CA? CA is a method within discourse analysis focusing on detailed examination of spoken interactions, such as turn-taking, sequence organization, and repair mechanisms. For example, CA might analyze doctor-patient interactions to understand how medical advice is communicated. How do power and politeness affect spoken language? Spoken language reflects and negotiates power dynamics and social hierarchies, with politeness strategies managing relationships and power imbalances. An employee's polite request to a superior, using hedging like, "I was wondering if you could possibly," illustrates awareness of power dynamics. What are multimodal aspects of spoken interactions? Spoken interactions often involve multimodal communication, including gestures, facial expressions, and body language. For example, hand gestures emphasize points, nodding indicates agreement, and eye contact shows attentiveness, complementing verbal communication. Why is analyzing spoken language important in discourse analysis? Analyzing spoken language reveals how people use language in real-time interactions to construct meaning, manage social relationships, and navigate power dynamics. This analysis provides insights into language functions in everyday life, uncovering the subtleties and intricacies of human communication.